Alright, welcome to this tutorial on addressables. So addressables is all about the ability to take your assets and push them onto the cloud and have them be downloaded remotely into your game. So think to all the games that you've downloaded and you saw that it was quick to download and install from, say, the Google Play or the Apple App Store, and all of a sudden you load the game and all of a sudden it's like downloading, 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 downloading. So it has that whole please wait, please wait, please wait. and you're waiting there to download stuff. But what's happening is it's downloading content. And the reason for that, one of the main reasons for having such a system is because there's limitations on the app size you can upload to the Google Play Store. Right? So Google Play, the limit is 100 megabytes. And then after that, you have to have expansion packs. Or if you're using the new AAB format, then it's 150 megabytes. Right? So there's limitations, but we know games are really high quality, right? So there's a ton of assets, ton of rich textures, sounds, music, all these other things. All these assets really balloon our game to be as big as, say, 2 gigabytes. And so we can't, we put all that effort into the game only to have it, wait to be too big to be uploaded to the store. So then we have to push content to the cloud. And so our tutorial here, what we're going to do today is do a very basic, very simple tutorial on getting textures downloaded from the cloud. And I'm going to use my Amazon AWS account to do this, where we're going to download their textures into our game remotely upon loading the game. And the AWS is a great system to use. It's very cheap, if not basically free to use. So definitely, if you don't have an account on Amazon Web Services, create one and follow along with this. So I've already gone ahead and I've created a small little terrain, basic terrain, with a few game objects here: a cube, a sphere, and a cylinder. These aren't my assets I'm going to download. Instead, I'll switch over to project. I have a bunch of images here, and these are actually images from my game Code Llama. So you can see here, these are actually the screenshots that you would see if you were to search up Code Llama. You would see them as the screenshots for the game. So I'm just using these. I'm actually going to set these as the materials for the game objects you see in front. So what we're going to do is, first off, we need to bring in the addressables library. All right, so I'm just going to go over to Package Manager, and I'm going to search under Unity Registry for addressables. So there's addressables. It's going to hit install. Let it do its thing. So as it's downloading, I should mention that you may want to pause this video and wait until, one, your addressables is downloaded and installed, and two, if you want to create your own simple terrain, add a few game objects, you can go ahead and do that as well. Pause the video and come back when you're ready to move forward. But all right, so we have here our addressables package is installed, and now what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the addressables options here. So first off, if I go to Window and I go to Asset Management, I'll see here addressables, which I didn't see before. And you'll see that there's a bunch of different options here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start off with groups, right? And it's going to create a little window. I'm actually just going to attach my addressables here. So it says here under groups, we want us to create a group for our addressables. So I'm going to hit create addressable settings. So it's built in some internal settings, standard settings that we're going to use for our game. Now, one thing you'll notice now, and it just so happened that I happen to have this texture open, there's now a checkbox that says addressable. So that's really all there is to it. Is once you bring your game in, you go to every single asset you want to make as remote content, and you check off the checkbox addressable. So there, it's given it it's got its path there. I'm gonna do it for each. Actually, I have to make sure. Well, I don't actually even have to hit apply. All right, I don't have to even hit apply because it'll just set it as addressable. All right, and there's heroes. So save Earth 5 and solve missions. They're all addressables, right? So now that's it. Now basically just set all of these objects as addressables. If I switch back to addressable groups and I expand the checkbox, the little arrow there, I see that they're all there. And what I want to do is I want to actually associate them. Now, here's the thing. Before I move further in addressable groups, the purpose of groups here is for you to group content. So in my game, The Adventures of Jojo and Toto, I actually recently added language packs. And I used addressables to do that because my game was getting bigger and bigger. So I had my game translated into Chinese and to Japanese. So I created groups for Chinese and for Japanese. And so now, and so you can do the same. But for this simple tutorial, I'm going to keep it as default. So we have here default. And if I hit the drop down here, I'm just going to hit the checkbox for default. So it becomes part of the default grouping. Do the same here for default, for default, for default, and for default. Now, before we go further, let's get this thing over with. First off, you have this path here. This is the name of the addressable, and this is the actual path of location of where it's supposed to be. But the addressable name doesn't have to have the full path. And this becomes easier for you when you are calling it in code, which we're going to do. We're going to write a script to call these addressables, download them, and call them in code. But there's no point in typing in the full path, especially since they're all unique names. Now, of course, if you had duplicate names, you may want to keep the path. That's a different story, but I'm not going to have different names to do this. So I'm going to right click here. There, and I'm going to say simplify addressable names. It just reduced it down to the name. And I'll do the same here for all of these. All right, so now we have all of our addressables here. We're ready to modify the settings for our addressables. So one other thing I have to do now is go to Window, go to Asset Management, Addressables, and now I'm going to go to Settings. And this is actually a very important window because you're going to tell addressables, because your addressables can be local and it can be remote. We need to tell it that we want it to be remote. So we have to check off this checkbox that says build remote catalog. And you'll see here that there's now two variables. There's build path and there's load path. I'm going to have the build path be local, so be the build target. All right, and the load path will be remote load path. So you notice that there's a URL there. We're going to replace this URL with our location in AWS. All right, but for now we'll just leave this as is, and you'll notice that it says standalone windows. So I'm going to move this to Android because I mean I could do it in Windows, but let's move it to Android. So to do that, I'm going to go to my build settings. First off, I need to add my open scene, so sample scene. I'm going to switch over to Android, hit switch platform, let it do its thing. All right, so at this point, I've re-imported my project into Android, so I'm going to close this off. And what I want to do now is I want to build my my game. First off, before even building the game, I want to build the addressable bundle. So it's going to be a bundle file. Now this is the first step to doing so. So I'm going to go to, so everything is in order. I don't think I need anything else here. I'm just going to go to build, new build. And in my case, it's just default build script. If you have some custom scripts, you might see them inserted here. But for me, I'm just going to use the default build script. And it's going to it's gonna work a little bit. All right, so it looks like it's done. Let's see what it did. So I'm gonna switch over to project. I'm just gonna do like show and explorer. And bring up explorer. So you notice that it's created a folder. So there's a folder called Android here under addressable assets data. It's created a bin file, but this is not the file we care for. It's only 2 kilobytes. We're going to scroll up or move up above assets. And there's a folder here called Android as well. And there's nothing here for us either. I'm looking for a bundle file. So, but it's created all of the background code that it needed to create so that when I'm ready to build my Android build and ultimately run it on my phone, it'll build that bundle file at that point. So I'm just gonna pull this away for a moment. And what we need to do now is connect our device, or not even connect our device. Let's actually just do an Android build. So you don't have to connect your device yet. It's gonna do build settings, go to player settings. Just gonna do a couple of housekeeping. So mine's gonna be a landscape game, so I'm just gonna uncheck portrait. And I'm not gonna do much with it. Under other settings, I'm just gonna change the name to be com.neurotelly. We'll say learn addressables. Right? Don't really care about other settings. Maybe I'll just push the API level to be like 8.1. Switch the scripting to IL2 CPP. Will take longer to build, but just to be good for 64-bit devices. And I'll switch it to ARM64. And let's just build it. Yeah, I'm just going to call it a droid build. It's going to use APK format. Let it do its thing. It'll take a little bit of time, so we'll fast forward. That first time build process is going to take a while, so you want to get comfortable, take a break. All right, so we've built it, and in this case, we noticed that no bundle file was generated. So there is one setting that's missing. This is a key setting that's commonly overlooked. So what we're going to do is we need to actually click here on back in addressable groups, right click on the actual group and go inspect group settings. And if we go to the inspector, we'll notice that our build path and our load path both need to be remote build path and remote load path, right? So these need to jive as well. And if this also, there's also one other setting in groups, settings, where we should set the build path also to be remote build path. So these settings, there's two, so this is where things, addressables has really simplified a lot of things, but there's still a number of different settings all over the place that aren't connected to each other, that are just causing issues for everybody. So after you've got build path and load build path for your settings and also for your group settings, so again, inspect group settings, build path and load path, both to remote build path and a remote load path, then we can go ahead to build, new build, default build script. And now, if we drag over, and I've already got the view open in Explorer, but this is the file I'm looking for. It's a bundle file with a super long name. This is the file I'm going to upload to AWS. So now what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to aws.amazon.com, log in, and upload this there. All right, so I've already logged into Amazon. So it's aws.amazon.com. I've already logged in, and I already and what you're going to do is under services, you're basically going to go to storage and click on S3. All right, and that leads you back to this window here. All right, and what you're going to do is you're going to create a new bucket. And so I've already got a few buckets open, but what we're going to do is we're going to create a new bucket for this thing. And I'm going to call this Learn Unity Demo. And region. Now here's the thing. This next setting sounds very scary, but unfortunately we need to uncheck this. We need to allow public access. So meaning that the idea is that, you've got your game, the public is going to want to download the content. So we have to uncheck that. Now you'll want to dig deeper into AWS and to understand the different subsettings here, just in case. Because so I don't claim to be an expert on AWS, so you'll want to dig into these settings, double check if your implementation is not going to be a problem, or if there's any security holes that have been created beyond just giving read access is really what we want to do. But to acknowledge that our current settings will result in object becoming public, and just hit create bucket. Now under you learn Unity demo, we made it public. We have to create a folder with the name of our build target. So it's going to be called Android. Now if you're going to do this for iOS, you're going to want to create a separate folder for iOS. What you need to do with Android is make it public as well. So I'm going to check off Android, go to Actions, make public. It's going to scare me again. So make public. All right. So now I've got this Android folder as make public. Now I'm going to go inside Android and I'm going to upload my bundle file. So I'm going to hit upload and add file and navigate to where it is. All right, so now I've got my file. It's a super long name, but as long as it has the .bundle extension, that's all that matters. And now we're going to, before we can upload, we should make this public. So grant public read access under permissions. Just save us a step. We can do this afterwards as well. Say I understand, upload, and it's uploading. It succeeded. It's a small file, 1.7 meg. It's only like 5 textures there, so that's understandable. So now we've got our file uploaded here. All right. So I'm going to jump back to S3 and I'm going to check off Learn Unity Demo. Actually, I'm going to go inside Learn Unity Demo, inside Android, and actually I move back up a level to back to Android. I'm going to go to access points. I'm going to say create access point. And we'll just call it Learn Unity Demo. Same bucket name. And instead of VPC, I'm going to make it Internet. And unfortunately, I have to uncheck block all public access and hit create access point. So now I have Learn Unity Demo now has its own access point, which means that I should be able to get a URL to this file. So it can be tricky. So what you do is you click on buckets first of all. You go to Learn Unity Demo and then check off Android and copy URL. And so that will give you your URL, which is what we need. So now what we're going to do is we're going to switch back to Unity. So I have the URL copied. And now I'm going to go to Window, asset management, addressables, and profiles. And I'm going to keep the build target there and just paste my URL. But I need to remove Android there and make sure there's only one slash. So there, you should see now you've attached your URL to this. So now you can try building again, but we need a way to call. Like, so now we have our bucket and our bundle file uploaded to the bucket. Now what we're going to do is we're going to build out a way to download the textures and then apply them as materials to our objects there. So now back in Unity, what we're going to do is we're going to first off create a script. And so I'm going to do that inside project. I'll create a new folder called scripts. Within scripts, I will create a C# script, and we'll call it downloader or download assets. And if I double click on it to launch Visual Studio, take a little bit of time. So now I have here my empty script. I'm going to get rid of update because I don't need update. What I'm going to do is and I'll do this afterwards, I'm going to have a text mesh pro text with progress text just to indicate downloading and download complete. So I'll say public tmp text, call it progress text. All right, it'll complain because I want it to import. So let's just see if it'll say using TMP Pro, perfect. Then the other thing I want to say is private string. It'll be an array of my IMG, I call it IMG file names. And set it equal to, basically I'm just going to use the name of the assets that I have inside addressables. And I already have the names down, so I'll just type them in. So battle adversaries 1. And whatever images you're using in your game, you want to match them up. And notice I'm not using the file extensions. So explore worlds. Of course, you'll get an error if you misspell this. And there's a number of different ways to do this as well. All right, so I've got there my 5 different assets, and they should match up with the asset bundles below. I also need a private int load count. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is inside start, I'll set my load count to 0. And all I have to do is looping through my array here, just call addressables load asset async. So I'm going to say for int I equals 0, I is less than img file names dot length, I plus plus. Now all I have to do is just say addressables. It's going to complain dot load async. In fact, you know what? No, rather than getting this thing wrong, let's just bring. I was hoping it to let. Well, maybe it'll actually let me have the using to save me. Now I'm gonna have to actually say using myself. So using Unity engine dot addressable assets. All right, get that out of the way. Now we can say addressables dot load asset async. Now these are texture 2Ds. Of img file names of I dot completed. Now all we have to do is generate a method to fire every time we've completed the download of this particular item. So we'll just say plus equals, I'm going to call it sprite loaded. You probably should call it texture loaded, but doesn't really matter in this case. There. And that's it for start. It's complaining because I don't have a method called sprite loaded. Let's see if it'll auto-generate it for me. It's going to see. I like seeing how, I like putting Visual Studio to the test. Let's see what it loads. So actually, that is the method I want. Async operation handle. And it actually added the using for me. Not bad, Visual Studio. All right, so that's the method I want. What I'm going to do is I have to put this inside a switch statement now to check for status. I'm going to use console calls to check debugging. So I'll just say switch obj dot status. Open up my curlies and say case async operation status dot succeeded. Now I know that there's 5 images. I want to do a percentage. So I'm going to say load count plus equals 20 for 20%. I'll say progress text dot text is equal to downloaded and then plus load count plus, and then put a % in there. We may not even see this in action. It may just go right to the end. We'll just say if load count is greater than or equal to 100, then we'll say progress text dot text is equal to download, well, actually in text, download complete. All right, and break. All right, we'll need another case, async operation status dot failed. And for this, we'll just put a debug dot log error for error texture load failed. And break as well. And finally, a default. Break. All right, and that's it. That's our script. Now we have to apply this script in our Unity window. So I'm just going to save this file. Switch back to Unity. We're going to come and do some more afterwards. And let it refresh. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a game object here. Create empty. I'll call it downloader. I'll add my component. So we'll call it download assets. All right. It wants a progress text. I have to create one. So I'm going to go to game object UI text mesh pro. All right. It's going to say the importer is going to pop up for me. It says import TMP essentials. Yeah, let's do that. All right. So it's done. I don't need the examples or extras. What I want to do is I don't care about the name of it. I'm going to leave it as is. I'm just going to put the text as downloading and put 0%. And let's make the width of this, let's say 600. All right. And let's anchor it to the bottom corner. Now, if you don't know what I'm doing for this, you may want to refer back to my lesson on user interfaces and adding UI objects earlier in this course. All right, so I've got this. Now I'm going to switch back to Downloader. I'm going to drag my text to progress text and save and build. So build and run. So we'll fast forward ahead. All right, so this build failed. And in fact, it still shows 0%. So I had to open up the debug messages in Android, and it came to an exception that said it was still pointing to localhost. All right, it was trying to download my bundle from localhost, and that's what you have to do. If this doesn't work, if you get that error, you have to. If it doesn't do anything for you, you don't see your download progress beyond 0%, then you have to go through the debug messages and figure out why. And so I had to scroll through. It says exception is still pointing to localhost, so that's not good. So now what we've got to do is go through our settings. And so I'm just going to close this up, go to addressable groups, start with this setting. All right, so now it's got my URL. All right, it looks like everything's fine there. Let's go to Window, Asset Management, Addressables, Settings. It's got my URL here as well, so that's good. So what this tells me is that I have to. What I didn't do was I didn't do another build. So if I do another new build, default build script, let it build its thing. And let's try again. All right, and so now this time when I run it, it shows download complete, which tells me that it was able to download all 5 textures locally. And if I try and kill the game and run it a second time, just by hand rather than building, what I'll notice is that it won't go and download again. It'll take its cached local copy and run with that. And it will check to see if something has changed between the bundle on the bucket and what it has locally. And if there's a change, then it'll re-download. Otherwise, it won't re-download. It'll just reload from cache that it's downloaded locally on the phone. So that's the beauty of it, is that it's smart enough to tell when to check online and download or when to load from cache. And there you have it. So this was our tutorial on addressables and learning how to create an addressable and upload it to an AWS bucket, and then how to download it and how to monitor progress of all your assets being downloaded. All right, so until the next tutorial, take care and bye for now.